Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Inside the Pigskin. My name is Scott Morganroth, the Motor City Madmouth. We have a newcomer to the show tonight, and his name is Bradley Walker. Welcome, Bradley.
Thanks, guys, for having me on. I appreciate the invite.
And if you're wondering what his logo is, it's one I'm all too familiar with and very proud of. It's the University of South Florida. I had an opportunity to meet Brad when he was down here covering the Syracuse USF game, and USF ended up winning 45-0 over at the Boca Raton Bowl. But I want to start this show off on a very somber note, okay? On Saturday, February 10th, 2024, I lost a very, very close person named Peterwein. Peterwein, who was pictured in the right-hand corner with myself, and I did the sports exchange on internet radio, the WEI network, and Mel Farr Jr. was actually with me with Peter. And I'm going to tell you right now, we're going to have a bigger tribute tomorrow. But I want to tell, I was at his funeral today, and, you know, it was just unbelievable being out there. Peter, if you're looking down on us right now, you know I love you very much. And it was an honor to share a microphone with you for the time that we did before, unfortunately, you started to encounter some medical problems. So, Peter, like I said, we'll do a lot more tomorrow night. But right now, I just want to let everybody know, Peter's family, Rachel, Alexandria, and the rest of them, I love you guys very much. And it was nice being able to talk to you about Peter today. And I'm going to be honoring Peter all week. Then again, I honor him all the time anyhow. So, Pete, rest in peace. You've been nothing but, you're a father figure to me. I'll never forget you, and I will always love you. All right. With that said, let's talk about the business at hand here right now. Here on Inside the Pigskin, we're going to talk a little bit about the Super Bowl. We're going to talk about some coaching movement going on as well. So I hope you can stay with us. Let me introduce the crew. And, of course, he's on every week. Bo Crouch, Football Talk with Bo. Glad to have you back, Bo.
Thanks for having me on, guys. Always fun to be here.
Oh, we enjoy having you as well. I call him the tranquilizer. Every time I get type A, he always finds a way to go out there and make things a little easier with me there. And since we're talking a little bit of I-4 love here between Bradley, we might as well bring on the other half of the I-4 equation, Travis Holmes, who is a Central Florida. He never thought he'd be ganged up by two bulls, although I've kept mine low-key, but glad to have you back, Mr. Holmes.
It's fine. I got to go and find me my cape and my outfit. You know, I don't mind wrangling some bulls every so often. Appreciate you having me.
Well, when you guys are paired, you can go ahead and do that. But at least tonight you were unprepared, so you had to fake it till you make it, Mr. Holmes. All right.
Yes, sir.
And of course, my running back, Mel Farr Jr. And Mel, why don't you give some of your recollections when you and I were on with Peterwein? I know we had an opportunity to get to know Peter, and you chimed in on my post yesterday when I announced his passing.
Yeah, I remember, when we first started out, obviously it was the three of us that were doing it. We were doing it on the telephone. Sometimes I might be driving home from work, or sometimes I might stay at the office and go ahead and call in. I remember him being a very nice man. I do recall you and I talking at a time where he had taken ill. Obviously when I saw that today, I was very sorry to hear about his loss. And obviously my condolences go out to you, his family, and all of his friends.
Yeah, it was unbelievable. You talk about our early beginnings, and I started on internet radio, WEI network. And you know what? I didn't take just any radio situation. Yes, I could have bought airtime if I wanted to get behind the microphone, but why would I want to buy airtime when I knew that my abilities warranted to be paid? So rather than do that, I stayed around, continued to write. Then when Peter and I came along, together we met, we knew that we could use the South Florida Tribune and the WEI network to form a great partnership, and that's what we ended up doing. And when Peter fell ill, I told him I'm going to make sure the sports exchange is well taken care of on my brand. He says, you know what? You have my support. I know you're going to do well with it. And there were times that show on internet radio would net anywhere between 4,000 and 6,000 people for the time that we were on there. We ran it Tuesdays and Thursdays from 5 to 7. So it was unbelievable how we had to connect to a lot of different time zones, and we did a lot of cross promoting. So Mel was one of my originals. He really was. He took a leap of faith with me. Ended up meeting Mel on LinkedIn, and of course Mel and I have had a great friendship since then. So Peter, once again, we're going to be talking about you all week, but tonight's our first act. So Rachel, if you're out there watching the show with the rest of your family, you know where we're at, but we're far from done with you guys for sure. All right, well, let's talk about the Super Bowl. And I'm going to start off top to bottom. Are you guys buying the fact that the San Francisco 49ers didn't know about the OT rules? I just read recently that Kyleshanahan said that they did know it, but if you're looking for an excuse to lose, I don't think this is a viable one. What do you think, Mel?
I'm not buying it, but I don't disagree with him taking the ball first. It's probably what I would have done. Put the pressure, go out there, score some points. When you put pressure, I felt pressure after they kicked that field goal. So I can only imagine the amount of pressure that the Chiefs felt, and knowing that they had to go out there and sustain a drive and put some points on the board, whether it be a field goal or whether they scored a touchdown. And it got into some dicey situations. You know, they did get a fourth down. They ran the ball on third down. Wasn't a very good running play. Ended up with a 4th and 1. Pat Mahomes was able to convert that. On the first down, they threw a pass. The guy gained 6 yards. The next thing you know, he loses 4. Trying to break a tackle, he loses 4 yards, and they're 2nd and 14. And they throw a great pass, and they ran a good play. Hit the Rice on a crossing route, and ended up getting the first down. But for the players, it really doesn't matter whether you know or not. Your job is to go out there and play. The coach's job is to be prepared for those types of situations.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure, you have to think about it. They just came off a long drive in which Kansas City went down there, I think, to kick the field goal to tie the game. The guys, the defense was just out there for 11 plays. That was a long drive. So you want to give your defense some rest. I mean, that's the smart thing to do. Given the situation of the game, forget about the analytics and all the other kind of stuff. You just got to go out there and play. And you got to try to put some points on the board. And, you needed to get a touchdown. Unfortunately, you were unable to get a touchdown. You were able to kick the field goal. That puts pressure on them. They have to score. A lot of bad things can happen. Fumbles can happen. Interceptions can happen. And they can get a loss of downs because they end up losing. They don't convert a 4th down. So the pressure was on Kansas City to score. Once you put up 3 points, the pressure was on Kansas City. So I really don't have a problem with what he did in overtime. And as far as the players knowing what the overtime rules are, heck, most people don't know what the overtime rules are because they always change them anyway. But it's really not on them to know it. It's really on the coaches to know it.
I'll make my point short and sweet. I heard the officials. They explained them pretty explicitly what they were going to do. And unless people have a hearing problem, they were explained pretty simply to me. All right. With that said, Brad, what's your thought?
No, I agree with Mel. I didn't know either. I just heard on the radio this morning here locally in Tampa that the defense was out there for that, that drive. And, I think Shanahan said, hey, I want to rest my defense, because if he put the defense back out there and, who knows, Kansas City would have went down the field, scored a touchdown, and then they were unable to come back and score one. And I think if that would have happened, the pressure would have been on Brock Purdy. And again, being in your first Super Bowl, being a young kid, like Mel was mentioning, turnovers happen, mistakes happen that way. And I think I don't, the whole thing with he didn't know the rules. He did. He did what he had to do. He took the ball to give his defense a rest. They got 3 points out of it. It just wasn't enough at the end of the to lose the game.
Okay. Bo?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not buying that they didn't know the rules. I mean, otherwise you would have saw them celebrating on the sideline if they thought they had won already. So, we didn't see any of that. But at the same time, I don't mind taking the ball first, part of which, like Mel said, you go down, you score, you apply some pressure, and you rely on your defense to make some plays. Now, obviously, if you're going second, you're going for it on 4th down. So it does change your strategy a little bit. But also from a strategic standpoint, if you score first, they get the ball, you get the ball back first, right? After that, next point scores. So you're guaranteed that 3rd possession. So, I mean, I actually don't mind taking the ball first. The fact that everybody gets a chance to possess basically it almost makes it like the sudden death it used to be, right? You want the ball first. You want to go down and just punch it in. So I mean, whether you knew it or not, you could see confetti wasn't falling. You got to go back out there and still play football.
Travis?
Right. I think this is a lot that's being made out about a few San Francisco 49ers who stated that they didn't know the rules. And then it became a bigger story than it truly is, because individual players may not know that. The person who called the coin flip, Fred Warner, knew that. The coach of the team, Shanahan, knew that. Everyone else, if individual players didn't talk about it because they didn't have a team-wide meeting on it, while I can understand that's something that you may want happening, that's not the deciding factor. And it's obviously not the deciding factor in the game. Everyone else has kind of already made the correct points. Hey, the defense already had this 11-play drive. They were exhausted. You don't want to put them right back on the field against Pat Mahomes. You have the fact that you get the ball on the third possession, that where it actually truly does become sudden death. All these are the correct answers. At the end of the day, whether or not the rest of them knew it, the two people that mattered most knew it: the coach and the person actually handling the coin flip. Everything else is just something to talk about.
Okay, you know what? We're going to lead off with you, Travis. Why don't you give me your general observations on the Super Bowl? What was the best thing that came out of it?
The best thing that came out of it? Lord.
Yeah.
Oh, the fact that I get to clown all of my 49er friends. That's the best thing that came out of it. Shanahan right now has a problem. Like, he already had a problem, faced against certain defensive coordinators, and they just give them problems. And I'm not going to say this whole game was on them, because if you take away those special team issues, that the block extra point with the offensive tackle getting blown up and the ball going off the blocking defender's foot, resulting in a touchdown. You take those two things away, I mean, we had an 8-point game, and the 49ers probably win it by double digits, but that's not how it happened. An opportunity, it favors the prepared, and unfortunately, that's always going to be the Kansas City Chiefs in this situation. But no, Shanahan's struggling against Jim Schwartz, and he's struggling against Steve Spagnuolo. Like, he's 10-1 against one. 1-10 against one, and 1-9 against the other. Like, they are giving him fits because they do not respect the 49ers every time they play them. They played the most cover 1 and the most cover 2, both man coverages, against the 49ers of any team this season. They played them 65% man and just said, beat us if you can. And they couldn't. That was insane.
Let's go to the chat room. Good evening, all. Smoking
Hey.
Jeremy.
What's happening, Jeremy?
What's going on, Jeremy? He's getting ready to go back to work here with us on Fire Up Michigan tomorrow. Did a heck of a job on Sunday, too. I got to give the guy a lot of credit. We had a great Fire Up show. All right, well, Bull, give me your general observations on the Super Bowl.
Yeah, so obviously I don't need to talk about the special team stuff since Travis just did that, but probably the fact that they decided they just didn't want to run the ball anymore in the third quarter was kind of a big thing. They got away from what was absolutely working for them. CMC was gashing them every time he touched the ball. And for the third quarter, when they, basically let KC take the lead, was because they decided CMC didn't want to be involved. I think they ran the ball 3 times that whole quarter. So it definitely had you scratching your head on why Kyle Shanahan, for whatever reason, when he has a double-digit lead, abandons the run, when conventional wisdom would say, use the run, chews up the clock, preserve that lead. Didn't make any sense.
What about you, Brad?
Yeah, what Travis and Bo said. The talk now is Patrick Mahomes the GOAT? Being that I am a Patriots fan, and then Tom came to Tampa Bay for a year. Yes, could Mahomes pass Tom one day? Yes, but he has 3. Tom has 7. So until he gets to 7, then we can have that conversation. I also think, too, that Tom Brady played in 2 different eras of football. The era where you could hit the receivers and hit the quarterback, and now the new era where if you touch the quarterback, you get a 15-yard penalty. So he played in 2 different eras of football. But, congrats, you got to give it up. And the one thing that I think we all talk to, let's look about Andy Reid, guy who struggled in Philadelphia. He comes to Kansas City. He takes a whim drafting Pat Mahomes, and now look at this later, and now you got 3 Super Bowl championships with him. That's amazing. And Andy should go down as one of the best coaches. And you know what? If Bill Belichick doesn't come back, Andy may be second behind Don Shula in wins overall. Or if he coaches long enough, maybe he'll pass Don. Who knows?
Great point.
I mean,
All right,
I
Mel.
wouldn't say
All
his
right, go ahead, Mo. I'm sorry.
I wouldn't say his time in Philly was really a struggle. I mean, he did get to a Super Bowl there.
And 3 or 4 straight NFC championships.
Exactly. I mean, he killed it in Philly.
Okay. Well, you know what, Mel? Go ahead. Take over the topic.
Yeah, I mean, he just couldn't win. I mean, he got let go because he just couldn't win the Super Bowl. But when I was watching the game, you look at the first half. It seems like both teams were real tight. Although I was very surprised how Brock Purdy played. You would think that he was a guy who had been there before because he seemed to be very calm, very cool, very collected, and it seemed like the Chiefs were kind of pressing a little bit. They seemed real tight in the first half of the game, and San Francisco was having their way in the first half. To be honest with you, defense was playing well. They were playing lights out. They were getting whatever they wanted, running the football, throwing the football. It looked like, San Francisco really controlled the game in the first half, but I think they only had I can't remember what the score was at halftime, but they didn't have a very large lead going into halftime. And even in the third quarter, they came out, looking good. Kyle Shanahan's problem is he believes all the hype. Everybody says he's a great play caller. He's a genius. He's this and that. And he has to start proving to people that he is everything that everybody believes that he is. And that's why he has all those trick plays. That's why he starts throwing the football a lot, as opposed to just making an ugly game, mucking it up, and just running the football. Christian McCaffrey, I mean, it showed that he was getting less than 3. It showed that he had averaging less than 3 yards a carry. But boy, I could swear every time he was touching the ball, it seemed like he was getting 6 to me. Now, there may have been some negative plays in there that caused it to the overall average to be less than 4. But it seemed like every time he touched the ball, he was getting at least 6. And that's, he touched the ball 30 times in that game, which is, you want to ride that's, he's the horse that pulls the buggy. So, I mean, that's who you want to ride. He's the one that's got you there. That's the guy that you want to lean on in that game. Defense played lights out. I think they only gave up 1 touchdown. And that was after that muffed punt, if I'm not mistaken. And, the offense needed to do something. The offense needed to put some points on the board. And I thought that was Kansas City's best defense out of all the teams that they've brought to the Super Bowl. I thought that was their best defensive team. And still, the 49ers were able to do whatever they wanted to do, running the football, throwing the football, getting nice little chunk plays. There weren't any big plays, but they were getting nice chunk plays that would allow them to keep the drives alive. They just kind of stalled somewhat in the red zone. But that's my takeaway from the game. It's just Kyle Shanahan being Kyle Shanahan, trying to prove to everybody that he is this great guru, this great genius. That's why I was very pleased that the 49ers lost. I was not rooting for the 49ers at all.
Well, yeah, I can tell you've had it in for the 49ers. Candy, let's go to the chat room, okay? Smoking Jeremy B's got one up. And you know what? Go ahead, Bo, and read it.
Oh, okay. I want to ask if you all noticed the 2-yard run on first down to have them award the Chiefs a first down on that play, 1:39 left in the fourth. Yeah, so I saw it on the screen, right? They went from first to second down, then they showed the Super Bowl logo, and then when it went back to first down, I didn't go back and watch the rest of the clip to see if that truly did, go down that way on the field. Sometimes your video editors, put up the wrong graphic. So I don't know if that was indicative of what actually happened on the field, but I did see that, I did see that switch on the screen.
All right. There's only 2 things I'm going to take out of this whole thing. Number 1, Kyle Shanahan is 0-3 in the Super Bowl. And 2, Reba McEntire had the best national anthem that I have ever heard and seen. This woman was unbelievable. I can tell you right now on YouTube, I probably played it about 10 times. You want to talk about a woman out there that went out there and poured it on and laid it on good? Reba McEntire, you made a fan out of me. That was a great national anthem. And as far as what else I took in the rest of the game, I got experts that went ahead and said everything I was going to say. That's why I waited to the end, because I got smart people on this show. All right. With that said, I want to point out that Inside the Pigskin is being broadcast around the world. The audio version of Inside the Pigskin can be heard on iHeartRadio, Apple, Spotify, Google, wherever you get your podcasts. Please hit the red subscribe button on YouTube, South Florida Tribune. We're striving for more subscribers. Please also comment, like, and share the broadcast. Want to be a guest? No problem. Just participate in the chat room or send your topic ideas to southfloridatribune@gmail.com. If you want to advertise cost efficiently, give me a call at 954-304-4941. We broadcast live on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and YouTube. My website's www.southfloridatribune.com, which Candy Ebling does an outstanding job. And our Twitter/X is at Tribune South. Candy Ebling is behind the scenes. She's our MVP. She does it all, whether it's commentate, website, produce, you name it. Okay. Also, I have a book out there called Lessons from the Microphone, Tuning into the Enduring Wisdom of Visionary Leaders, which pretty much says old school media versus new school media. It is available on Kindle and Amazon. What kind of a read is it? Well, I'll tell you one thing, okay? For those individuals that want to learn about the media or young podcasters that are aspiring to get in it. All right, with that said, okay, Jeremy is commenting on the national anthem, Whitney Houston and Reba McEntire, the two best I can remember. Jeremy, you know what GMTA stands for, right? Great minds think alike. Very good. So
that's pretty awesome. But also, you said that Shanahan is 0-3 in the Super Bowls. Shanahan's not just 0-3. Shanahan's 0-3, and he's been up double digits in all three of them.
There you go.
Like to everyone else's point, that man just has a knack for avoiding the run when he just needs to just run the clock out.
Jeremy, all I'll say about it is I like when you mention my name. I'm going to stick with Reba McEntire, and that's about it because I've only listened to it 10 times. And she actually made my mini drives playlist, which only has 36 songs. And if you make that list, you're doing really good, Reba. Let me tell you, that's a heck of a rendition. Okay, so I hope that answers your question. And don't ask me on Fire Up Michigan tomorrow because you already got the answer. We'll have new topics tomorrow. Just to let everybody know a little bit about what our programming could be like tomorrow. We're going to have Fire Up Michigan tomorrow, followed by the Sports Exchange. And, of course, we're going to have Pundits on Thursday and Fire Up, which Jeremy Ballrick will be on there as well. And, of course, Jeremy and Candy are back at it on Sunday. So with that said, we'll continue. We're going to move over to college football a little bit. Mel should feel pretty good about what I'm about to say here, or maybe not, but it's certainly an area he's all too familiar with. Chip Kelly is leaving his head coaching job to be the offensive coordinator at Ohio State University. But guess what? At least the one thing UCLA can feel about is they have a Hall of Famer in Deshaunfoster as their new head coach. Well, I might as well lead off with Mel. It's his alma mater. What's your take on Chip Kelly, Deshaunfoster?
Kind of odd. You look at the landscape of college football. That's kind of a lot of the guys are leaving for coordinator positions. I mean, he had his name in the hat for a number of coordinator positions in the NFL, which, I could kind of understand. Maybe you want to do that, go to the NFL and be a coordinator. I know the coach from Boston College left the head coaching position there to become a defensive coordinator at the NFL level. I believe it was with the Vikings or Bears, somebody, I can't remember exactly which team it was, with the Packers. And so, I mean, I can understand jumping and going back, going to the pros, but I can't understand staying in college, taking a haircut in your pay, and going to be a coordinator in the same conference, in the same conference that you're in. It's just obvious that Chip got tired of the responsibilities of a head coach, constantly having to recruit, not just out there nationally, but also your team all the time. I was reading something about Coach of Maryland, who was talking about one of his third string running back and what his NIL demand was. He wanted $100,000 or he was going to jump in the portal. This is the third string running back that's making these kind of demands. So they've got to do something with this NIL. I'm not going to get onto that tangent, but I mean, I'm glad that he's gone. I wish he would have left earlier, or I wish Jermon would have fired him after the SC game, which they planned on doing until he won the game. Because I don't know much about Deshaunfoster. I know this is the guys that all the players wanted. I don't know much about him as far as a coach is concerned. I know he's been coaching for a while. He's been a position coach. He had taken a job with the Raiders prior to coming back to UCLA. Hopefully he can bring some excitement there. Hopefully he can recruit. Hopefully he can keep these players there, keep this thing together. They're getting ready to play in the Big Ten, and that's not going to be easy. I mean, I don't see other than their 3 non-conference games, I see 3 wins right now. It's going to be very, very difficult with what they have, what I saw last year, what they have, and what I know is waiting for them in the Big Ten with the Penn States and the Michigans and the Michigan States and the Wisconsins and Ohio States, even Maryland and Rutgers. It's not going to be easy, but excited for the next chapter. See what's going to happen. I'm going to support the guy, and we'll just have to see what happens.
Hey, Jeremy, by the way, Shanahan was the offensive coordinator in Atlanta. I believe Danquinn was the coach. We're going to get to that in a moment. But yeah, let me add one thing to what Mel had to say. I think he saw that schedule in the Big Ten and knew you better get out of there, and saw the writing on the wall that his days were numbered. So you might as well leave when you have to.
And think about it. If he gets fired, he's kind of damaged goods, right? If he gets fired,
right, exactly.
It's a little bit more difficult to get a job than if you just go ahead and leave right now while things are kind of good. It's a different scenario for you when you get fired.
Right. He left on his own terms, however that may be. So good points. All right, Travis, what's your take on it?
I mean, he left on his own terms, and he gets to move from LA to Ohio. I don't know how much of a that's a hard sell, man. But to each their own. Maybe it's inflation. I don't know. Maybe he just doesn't like the recruiting and everything going on with the job. This one lost me. To Mel's point earlier, I was expecting him to maybe go to the NFL, get an OC job there. That all of that made sense, but it just felt like he never wanted the job that he has, and they never loved him because he's not the greatest. I'm keeping it 100.
He's gonna get you 8 wins. That's what he's gonna do. He's gonna get you 8 wins.
That's what it is. Like, they were happy with the original hire.
That's what you're gonna get.
Thinking he was going to be what he was, and he just never reproduced that performance. I mean, he hit a single when he was in Philadelphia. Like, he didn't do dreadfully. It was fine, and he's never recreated his previous performances, unfortunately. So maybe he's just tired of the NIL. Like, maybe it's that, and he can just coach his offense and focus on that, and not have any of the responsibility of the whole team. And maybe some guys are really good at just doing this small thing and not having all the extra responsibility. And maybe he knows that's who he is now. Maybe he's entering that stage of life. Who knows?
Well, it's funny how you say that too, because remember, Nick Saban bailed out because he got sick and tired of all the other stuff he hadn't had to deal with. So, we're going to start seeing a trend. But with that said, I'm going to turn it over to Brad. Go ahead.
Nick didn't say that. We're just speculating.
Well, no, Nick retired. I think he got sick and tired of all that, and that's why he's got the best job in the world on TV now. Go ahead, Brad.
Guys, do you think maybe Ryan days are numbered in Ohio State? Do you think maybe that's why he left UCLA?
What, to get
to
the
take
Ohio
over
State
that
job?
to take over that Ohio State job? And and don't take me wrong, I'm not dissing on UCLA by any means. No, you're alumni there. To me, it sounded like maybe Ryan Day's gonna go to the NFL or walk away, and they go, "Hey, Chip, would you like to come coach at Ohio State?" And now Harbaugh's left Michigan, and there's a new coach at Michigan. They're coming off a national championship. They beat us the last 3 or 4 years. Just saying, there might be something behind the scenes that we're not seeing. I could be totally wrong.
Chip really likes to recruit. I don't know if Chip likes to recruit. I don't know.
Okay.
I mean, you just look at the players.
I don't like to recruit. Yeah.
Yeah.
You just
All right, Candy, go to
the squad.
Especially the new recruiting.
Candy, go to the chat room real quick. I want to hear about the Brian Hartline one that he mentioned. Iowa wasn't slouch either. They got rid of Ferentz. Okay, but I want to see this one here.
Iowa went to the Big Ten championship with Ferentz as their offensive coordinator. So, I mean,
right.
A lot of people, say negative things about him, but I mean, they played good defense. That's what they did. You don't need to score a lot of points when you play good defense.
Good points. Right. Okay. The one that I want to go to, though, Candy, is that one. Biggest mistake OSU made was not promoting Brian Hartline. Brian Hartline left OSU because of it. You know what, Bo, why don't you take the lead on this one? It was also why OSU lost 22 players per portal. All right, Bo, you got 2 to talk about.
Yeah, so I kind of thought that that Day might have been out after this last season, just because they haven't been able to beat Michigan. It's one of their rivals. It's such a huge game for the program. But I mean, there's a real chance that he gets fired if this season doesn't go well, especially now that Harbaugh's gone, right? So if this was a play at having an inside track at the job, yeah, I could see Chip Kelly doing something like that. That being said, to your guys' point, he may just not like the recruiting. It's not like he's been amazing at player personnel anywhere he's been. So whether it's been in the pros or not. And then you also kind of wonder if some of it was forced upon him as well, because he was looking at pro jobs this cycle anyway, right? Like he was trying to get OC jobs in the NFL. I know he met with the Seahawks, a couple other teams. So, I mean, it might have been one of those, you already have your foot out the door. Why don't you go ahead and get your other foot out the door too?
I mean, boy, doesn't it seem that way? I mean, you know, again, recruiting is a much different. You have to recruit your own players, let alone bring in new ones. And all of a sudden, the NIL transfer portal, it's become a bit of a monster out there. Okay, with that said, let's move on to the next subject. There's a guy that was supposed to go to Ohio State, but decided, I don't want to go there. I'll stay home. His name is Bill O'Brien. He's returning to his hometown of Boston to be the actual head coach of Boston College. So, again, there we go, Mel. Bill O'Brien is in Boston, okay, but he didn't get the Patriots job. What kind of a job do you think he's going to do over at Boston College?
I don't know. I was my brother was talking to one of his teammates who does a lot of covers a lot of football, and Andre Ware, and he was saying that people don't like him. He's very difficult to work under. They said guys are going to hate going to work at Boston College. So I don't know. I mean, he was able to hang around the Texans for a while. I think he did a good job at Alabama when he was over there with Nick Saban. He didn't do a very good job this year with Mac Jones. I thought that he would kind of resurrect Mac Jones' career since he was the one that coached him when he was over there. He had that outstanding year, and I think they won the national title that year. I thought that Mac Jones would have done a lot better, would have made a lot more improvement. So, I know he took the job at Penn State after a very difficult situation with the whole scandal with Jerry Sandusky, and made the program respectable. Boston College is not an easy place to win. They're in the ACC. He's going to have to go out there and recruit. Obviously, he wanted a head coaching position, and he was able to get one. He was able to get a premier one. As a matter of fact, I mean, he got a premier one. He was able to stay at home. His family was going to stay there in Boston anyway, in the Boston area, while he coached at Ohio State. So it just kind of worked out for him, kind of fell in his lap. So I'm not, I don't feel one way or the other about Bill O'Brien, but I'm sure they'll do, I'm sure they'll get 7-8 wins. I'm sure, because the ACC is a tough conference for a Boston College because it's tough to recruit there.
Amazingly enough, I don't think Boston College is a high-pressure, high-cooker job. So anything he could do to improve that program, he'll look like a genius there anyways. He really will. So, you leave Ohio State, you get the head coaching job with a university that, what do they really, people know about Doug Flutie's Hail Mary, and the Miami.
Yeah, I got a buddy that went to school there.
What's that?
I got a buddy that played there and came out the same year I did, but I hadn't even heard of Boston College prior to that.
Yeah, well, amazingly enough, Boston College isn't really known for their moments, not their college football playoff.
Their moment.
Acumen.
Yeah, their moment.
Their moments. There you go.
Their moment.
Oh, well, that's true. The Boston, Doug Flutie. My gosh, what else can I say about him? All right, Travis. You got to really think about this one, Travis.
I mean, how is he going to do? That's a hard one, man. Because I think Mel kind of just hit on a lot of the main points of, well, he didn't do very well in a situation that you kind of thought that he would in New England. We didn't really get a chance to see what he's going to do at Ohio State, since he's basically Aaron Rodgers getting hurt after 4 plays, in and out the door there. And, well, he did a really good job when he was at the Houston Texans, because I'm a Jacksonville Jaguars. That's who I cover. I love what he did with Deshaun Watson, and at that time, putting in a spread offense and actually implementing a lot more of his college offense into the NFL. That was great. But then you just haven't seen him do a lot of that at the college level. So that's the question of what Mel was saying. You're going to get a solid team that's going to be a 7-8 win team, but I don't know if you're trying to become one of those top tier teams, I mean, Bill O'Brien's not moving that needle. Like, I think we all kind of know that. So what is the hire for it? He's a body, man. He's a guy. I guess I'd trust him to run a convenience store and maybe a bottom tier team, but that's probably about it.
All right, Brad, top that one. I like that. That's a pretty interesting analogy people think about.
That's tough to top, Travis. And Mel hit a good point too. The ACC is not the easiest conference to win, and obviously we saw a team go undefeated in FSU and not make the college football playoff.
Right.
I'm sure you guys talked about that on previous shows. And Syracuse, or not Syracuse, Clemson as another team that's tough. North Carolina is a tough team. Duke is starting to rise. So Bill O'Brien's going to have his hands full of Boston College getting conference wins, which all alumni will say, you got to beat your conference opponents to be successful. And Bill's going to have his hands full winning against teams like FSU and North Carolina and Clemson, just to name a few.
Okay. Well,
yeah, I mean, one of the things that I think that is overlooked with this Bill O'Brien appointment is it feels like it was probably the only job really available to him, right? He falls in that coaching, group of coaches that coach hard. They're grinders. They're in your face. They're kind of a negative reinforcement style coach. And if you look around the league, those are all the guys that don't have jobs today. So this coaching cycle in college and in the pros, if you had that hard line, Vrabel, Belichick, if you had that style of coaching, you didn't get jobs. And I think this is one of those where he embodies some of that same type of coaching style. And this may have just been the only job that he could have got.
it's an interesting point. It really is when you talk about that, because again, and I'm going to get into this probably next week, talking about Mike Vrabel and Eric Bieniemy, but the problem is we have too many other things we had to get to with the Super Bowl, but we'll be touching on some of those things, Paul, that you just mentioned. Thank you. All right, Candy, go to the chat room. Kneecap wants to talk a little bit about the Lions, so we'll just put the information out there for people to see. The Lions made an interesting signing with a futures contract. Matthew Batch, defensive end, outside linebacker, CFL's defensive MVP with 18 sacks for the BC Lions. So it goes from the northern version of the Lions to the other northern. And Matt Corral signed with UFL's Birmingham Stallions. Say, good. Thanks a lot for the information. Nobody has to comment on that. But those are some FYIs. With that said, Jim Harbaugh has taken 4 Michigan coaches. He's poached 4 of them. But one he didn't get was Wink Martindale, the new defensive coordinator. So, Mel, what are your thoughts about the hire of Wink Martindale to the Wolverines?
Wink is boom or bust. It's either going to be all great or it's going to be, they're just busting, the guys are just running around everywhere because he's going to run an aggressive scheme. Now, the guy that was there was coached with, if I'm not mistaken, coached underneath Wink Martindale before. So he's kind of familiar when he's with the Ravens. So he's kind of familiar with that style. I mean, because Michigan plays a kind of an aggressive style as well.
Well, you're talking about Jesse Minter and Mike McDonald. So, yeah, you're right that they did play under Martindale. Continue.
I like the hire for Michigan. Again, I'm not a Michigan fan. I was a Harbaugh fan. I like the hire for Michigan. I think it'll keep them aggressive. And, anything to continue to put that pressure on Ohio State, I'm all for it. And I don't think Chip Kelly's probably going to like it. It'll be very interesting. It's sad that we're sitting here talking about a guy. I mean, he's only lost, 2 games the last 2 years? I don't know how many games he's lost over his career since he's been the head coach, but it hasn't been many. But I know he's lost 3 or 4 in a row to that one school up north, and that's just unacceptable. I know Earl Bruce lost his job because he couldn't beat Michigan. So, I mean, that's a big deal there. But the guy's, he's a good coach. He's a good recruiter. He's energetic. He's enthusiastic. He keeps those guys fired up. They play very well, but they just haven't been able to get over that hump. And I don't think that they're necessarily going to beat because Harbaugh is not there. That means that they're going to, that this is their opportunity. Because I don't think Harbaugh was coaching that game when they beat Ohio State, was he? He was suspended that game, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Harbaugh. I think he was suspended, and I think Sharon was
Yeah.
coaching that game.
Yeah.
So it doesn't necessarily mean that now, Jim got out of there at the right time. You look, it was a very senior laden class or upperclassman laden football team. You look at the number of players that they have that are going to be going to the combine. They got the most, they got 18 players that are going to the combine. So they're going to probably have a younger team. So that may have an effect on their play out there. Obviously, they're going to have somebody new at the quarterback position with J.J. McCarthy deciding to declare for the draft. So that's something to look at. I know they had a guy that they would sprinkle in there who's a little bit more of a dual threat kind of quarterback. So their offense is probably going to look a little bit different than what it's looked like in the past. But I'm sure they'll still be run-centric, run-heavy. But I think it's a good hire for him. I like Wink Martindale. I like aggressive coaching. I like, hey, we're going to line up and you guys try to figure it out.
All right, Candy, go to Jeremy's latest. All I'm going to do is read it. And then if anybody wants to chime, fine. Glad Michigan also hired Wisconsin D-line coach. Wink Martindale likes to run at zero blitz. Great for the linebackers, but hard one.
If you got good DBs, hard in secondary. But if you got good DBs, it don't matter.
Right. Okay.
You got to get to the quarterback. That's the whole thing. You better get to the quarterback.
That was exactly what I was gonna say. I'm a
Right,
DB.
well,
I'm a DB guy, and I love Wink Martindale. I always have. Even when they say it's boom or bust, or when they say it's going bad, hey, normally it's going bad because he has bad DBs. Like you're going to be as good as your athletes.
You're not getting home,
right?
Well, that's the biggest thing. Gotta get home.
But in college, you can recruit. This isn't like the NFL where you just draft. Hey, man, this is about college throwing money at kids and going and getting them from their couches or from their parents' couches. Cool. If you don't have the guys, go and get the guys. That's a lot easier. So I was actually thought this was a very interesting hiring simply because there is no limit to who you can go and get. You just got to go get them. And he essentially quit, we'll say, the Giants because he was pissed off. It is the best way I can say it without cursing. He was pissed off because of not being able to control his assistants and they getting fired. And then he goes to college where he's probably going to have significantly more power and not have to deal with that BS.
Has he ever coached at the college level before? I
know he hasn't coached in 20 years in college. I can't speak to if it's before that. Yeah. But I know he's been in
the thing about the recruiting aspect. That's the thing that probably drives most coaches crazy.
Well, but he probably doesn't have to deal with the stuff that he had to deal with in the NFL, and that's the current taste in his mouth is this dude was going to fire 3 or 4 of my assistants, and now I'm going to college and I have I at least know in this hiring I have the power as far as that is concerned. I'm sure that there's no way that didn't come up in that conversation, but maybe he won't like the recruiting. He'll be back in the league in a year or two. Who knows?
Probably.
Yeah. Well,
or retire.
Yeah.
I could see him. I could see him going back to the league, especially when it comes to recruiting the way it is with the NIL and transfer portal and everything it is now, because you're not just recruiting before the season and recruiting outside. Now you're recruiting inside, but they also have that secondary window of the transfer portal. So you can lose guys after your season starts, which is crazy. So, I mean, I don't know if he's going to love it long term. Obviously, it's a nice pickup for them. I like how aggressive his defense can be, and you have to assume that dynamic with the Giants had to have been toxic for him to just be like, you know what, I quit.
Hey man, when you get older, you can say, "I'm too old for this." What's the phrase? I'm too old for this.
Yeah, right.
He's like, "No, I'm out of here."
I like it.
That is interesting. Well, you know what? I'll take the last word on this, but go ahead, Brad.
No, the 3 guys hit it well. Again, you guys were talking about recruiting. It's going to be easy when you win a national championship and you've beat Ohio State, 3 or 4 years in a row. It's going to be easy to get those kids to come to Michigan. So yeah, I think he's in a good spot. Michigan probably will have some bumps and bruises because they will have a younger team. But I mean, they're Michigan. They always find a way to get back on top. So we'll just have to wait and see what happens.
Well, bear in mind, Jay Harbaugh took a job at the Seattle Seahawks. So the Wolverines have lost 5 coaches during the offseason. I expected there to be some turnover on the staff anyway. So I like the Wink Martindale hire. At least they can find a name there that a lot of people know adds credibility to it. Now, again, I like your way of saying it, where I can use the excuse I'm too old for this. Yeah, I mean, how many of us that are this age can probably use that? Well, that's true. Some of us do qualify. All you got to do is look at the color of our hair, and that probably might allow you to do that. But yeah, I like the Wink Martindale. It's a high profile hire, but not only is it a high profile hire that people still want to go to Michigan. Okay, the Wolverines got their national championship. You can't take it away from them. Harbaugh did what he had to do to get him the title. And you know what? You never know whether or not Martindale's there long enough to at least be able to be a mentor to somebody below them, that they, like what we saw with the Wolverines with Minter and McDonald. So those are the intangible things I'm looking for as well. So I have no problem with it. I think it's a good. I think, and we're going to talk about Sharon more on a future broadcast, not tonight. Again, tonight's focus is on the Super Bowl and the coaching movement, but hats off to the Wolverines. You know, they were able to get a guy with an incredible reputation, and I'm looking forward to seeing how Wink Martindale goes. Got a couple more things I want to talk about tonight, and one of them is a good stat. Sunday Super Bowl 58 sets a record as most watched telecast with 123.4 million on all platforms, and those platforms, by the way, include CBS Television Network, Paramount, Nickelodeon, CBS Sports, Univision, and NFL Plus. Well, obviously, when you can get your product, those speak for themselves. But what are your thoughts about that number? That's pretty unbelievable, and yet you can only imagine what's going to happen a year from now.
Yeah, I mean, it's impressive for sure. It's unfortunate that it's watered down across so many different platforms at this point. That makes it makes you wonder how well they're really tracking that number, especially since this was a matchup that a lot of people, when you were just out talking to them, were like, I could take or leave watching this one. So it's interesting to hear it being the most televised of any of them out there. So, yeah, I mean, interesting how they're tracking it, but I mean, I guess cool.
Okay. All right, Travis.
Well, the NFL, and we talked about this a few weeks ago, maybe even a month ago at this point. Like the NFL has now had a historic season where the viewership for the season was up. I believe it was like 9 or 10% when we talked about on the previous show. Then you have the playoffs that was up like 13% viewership, and now we have a Super Bowl that's up whatever this percentage would be to the most watched Super Bowl ever. And it's like, all right, cool, because the NFL has done a good job. They've adding the female audience with the Taylor Swift stuff, but also the other additional merchandising franchises that they're kind of just, I guess, I don't know, putting out there. But also, I saw a weird stat. I was like, wait a minute, what? This was the biggest viewership audience in the U.S. period since the 1969 moonwalk. And I'm like, I'm sorry, what? That is craziness. Okay, but to Bo's point, they're putting it across all these different platforms. I mean, if you have it on multiple streaming services, you have it on the NFL Plus, you have the kids version of the show now with the Nickelodeon broadcast. You have the Spanish version. Oh my Lord! Like you got like 15 different ways to watch the game, and then all these apps and everything. People can watch it on their phone. At that point, you have no excuse to miss the Super Bowl. Yeah, that's probably why the viewership's up, and it's going to keep going up as long as you don't have, I don't know what dreadful team, the Carolina Panthers and the Jaguars playing in it. I don't know, and that's my team. But I acknowledge, like, if you have it would have to be a dreadful matchup for you not to go, 3% over last year's numbers.
Yeah,
interesting. All right, Brad.
Yeah, I don't know what else to add. Bo and Travis hit it on the head. Travis said, said the thing is drawing female audiences, and Taylor Swift had a big part of that. I also think you had a big child, like you said, Nickelodeon aired the Super Bowl, but I think there's a lot of young girls out there that are Taylor Swift fans. So anything she does, they're watching on TV. And there was a comment that I heard the other day that Taylor's winning Grammys, Travis winning Lombardis. So if that keeps going on, the NFL is in good shape moving forward.
I mean, the bottom line is we try to get different perspectives, and I think the way your comments are is you probably feel like the majority of us, the more platforms you have, the bigger the audience. It's pretty straightforward. But when you look at 123.4 million, Mel and I would probably beckon the question as how much higher would that be if the Detroit Lions ever got there? And I'll lead Mel into that one. Mel, can you imagine if the Lions got there, where that number would really be?
Yeah, I don't know if it would be higher. I mean, it's star power. There's a lot of star power there. Well, first of all, the NFL does a very good job of marketing their product. Number one. Number two, they did a very good job of marketing this Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce thing. They use that to their advantage as well. They said they probably got about $330 million worth of free advertising with just people talking about that whole dynamic, the Travis,
Right.
Taylor Swift and her coming to the games and so forth and so on. Kind of like our former president does. Whether it's good or bad, he doesn't care as long as people are talking about it. So the NFL does a great job marketing their product. They said there was probably at one time throughout the course of the game, 200 million people tuned into the game, watched a certain part of the game. I think there's a couple things that made it one of the largest viewing audiences. Number one, obviously, is Taylor Swift, her effect. And number two, that was in Las Vegas. I think that had a lot to do with it as well. It's the first time it's ever being broadcast in Las Vegas. People probably wanted to see what that looked like, how that was going to be. And then you got the star power of the players. You got the great storylines with San Francisco and Brock Purdy, him being Mr. Irrelevant and making it to the Super Bowl in the second season. And then obviously you have the great Pat Mahomes and Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift and all the folks on that side. You got Christian McCaffrey on the other side, Nick Bosa. So I mean, there's a lot of star power there as well. And again, NFL, nobody does it better than the NFL, and they do a great job of marketing their product. And they took full advantage of the Taylor Swift Travis Kelce relationship to continue to market that brand. And so it didn't surprise me. I was looking forward to seeing what the numbers were going to be because I knew they were going to break a record. So I wasn't surprised to see that.
Okay, our final topic of the night. And we're going to start off with Brad this time, all right? Evaluate the hires of Mike McDonald going to Seattle and Dan Quinn going to the Washington Commanders. All right, Brad.
Mike McDonald, the Seattle hire, I mean, I kind of feel bad for Pete Carroll. There's a guy who's been with the Seahawks. They were what? A missed throw away from being a dynasty if they had just handed the ball off to Marshawn Lynch, which helped, Tom Brady and the Patriots win another Super Bowl. But had they done that, I mean, I just feel bad for Pete Carroll because, I mean, at his age, he's still very vibrant. You see him running up and down the sidelines. But again, at the end of the day, you got to get younger. The NFL is getting younger. The head coaches are getting younger. The Dan Quinn thing, I'm kind of questioning. Scott, you said earlier he was the head coach of the infamous Super Bowl where they were up by 23. What was it? 20.
Right.
A lot of points, 22 points, 26 points, and they lost to the Patriots. And yeah, so that's going to be interesting, but Washington, I think, is still, they're getting out of the dark days there with the name change and their former owner and all that stuff. So I think the Seahawks hire will be the better of the two, but I could be totally wrong, and Dan Quinn might turn the Commanders around. So we'll have to wait and see.
Oh, those are interesting points. All right, I'm going to turn it over to Travis.
That's an interesting one because I don't know enough about Mike McDonald to even give a real opinion if I'm just going to keep it 100. I simply don't know enough about him. So I'm in that wait and see category, I guess. And as far as the Dan Quinn situation, that's an interesting one. I thought it was a bad hire originally, if I'm going to be honest. I thought it was just like, what? All right. And then you hear the details about how he was the third option for them, and then it's like, oh, that don't sound great. But then the more you look at the staff that he's putting together, it's like, well, that's not dreadful. That's not bad. Maybe that could work. Like, he's got Brian Johnson, Cliff Kingsbury, which, depending on who you ask, if you're an Arizona fan, some people love him, some people hate him. I always thought he was at least a net positive. He just was a bad head coach overall. But if you can keep him as your OC, you're probably doing all right. Like he's got a solid coaching staff around him. And that's almost equally as important or as impressive as just being a good individual leader, because you can be a great leader, but then if your guys under you aren't, it's going to show. Those cracks will show eventually. So I have to believe that Washington team, their arrows pointing up overall. I don't know what that means in the whole scheme of things, but I actually did like the overall, staff they're putting together, even if I didn't love the hire.
Excellent points, Travis. You know what, Bo? Go ahead and chime in on that.
Yeah. So, I mean, when it comes to Mike Macdonald, that in theory should be a good hire for the Hawks, because one of the things that he's been incredibly good at is calling a defense. And that's something that Seattle has really struggled with over the last 5 years. They've had a bottom 5 defense in just about all 5 of the last 5 years. And the offense is a dynamic offense, right? Like they were in the playoffs a year ago. They were 1 game away from being in the playoffs this year, despite the fact that their defense was terrible. So if he can bring this defensive attitude that they had with the Ravens and elevate it, not even to an elite status, you elevate it to a middle of the road team, and you keep the dynamic nature of that offense, that's going to be a tough out for anybody. He's going to have incredible pressure to be good immediately, though, because this was a team that was just in the playoffs, and there's been an insane amount of success during the Pete Carroll era, and he comes on the heels of Mike Holmgren also getting this team to a Super Bowl. So he's going to have a lot of pressure to be good day one. On the other side, you got danquinn. They are building a team. He's going to have a lot of latitude. They're not going to expect them to be awesome day one, because they traded away a bunch of pieces. They have a lot of cap space. They have a lot of picks. And not only do they have a new front office, but they got all new staff. This ownership group also coming in for their first year, they're going to have to be a little bit patient, because this is a full rebuild top to bottom. So I think that actually favors Dan a little bit, just because the expectations aren't going to be extraordinarily high coming in.
Well said. Now,
yeah, I think I think Washington kind of settled. I think they wanted Ben Johnson. I think Ben Johnson spurned them, and they took and I feel bad for danquinn because he wasn't their first choice, but it's he gets another opportunity to be a head coach. They are devoid of talent, because they did get rid of a lot of their talent at the trade deadline, and they don't have a quarterback, but they do have, I think, the second pick in the draft, so they can address that. I'm not real sold on Cliff Kingsbury as far as an offensive coordinator. I'm not really sold on him and his abilities. I've read some things about him recently, and the person was talking about he hasn't won. I mean, the guy got fired up, which I never could understand.
Right.
He lost his job at Texas Tech, but ended up getting the job at the Arizona Cardinals, which I never understood. Now, I know he was taking an offensive coordinator job position or something like that in the interim for a short period of time at USC, but all of a sudden, you get fired up. You lose. You don't do anything at Texas Tech. You got a losing record there, and you become the head coach of the Arizona Cardinals. Didn't really do anything. I think they might have made the playoffs once, but I was never really impressed with anything that he did over there. Now, I guess for a few years at a couple stops, Houston and somewhere else, he did a good job as offensive coordinator. They put up big numbers. Texas A&M, I think, was the other school. So we'll just have to see. That's the big thing for danquinn, because he's not an offensive guy. He's a defensive guy. So, when he had his best years is when Kyleshanahan was his offensive coordinator there. That's when they went to the Super Bowl. He's got to get that right. He can get the defense right. He's going to get the guys. They're going to be fired up. They're going to be ready to play. But he's got to get that offense right. They got to get somebody that can play that position, obviously, and they got to get some talent. They got to be able, be able to do the things that he's been doing with the Dallas Cowboys, which is getting after the passer and turning the ball over. Macdonald, I think he'll do fine. I mean, you look at what he's done with that Ravens defense. That defense has been lights out. It's funny, all the pundits will say that you need to hire offensive coaches, hire offensive coordinator as a head coach. But a lot of these coaches that got jobs were from the defensive side of the ball, whether it's for Atlanta, whether it's for Seattle. You look at Washington, in other teams, a lot of the coaching hires went to the other side of the ball. I don't know why that is, but it's just funny. All the pundits say you should go offense, offense, offense. but these owners are going with the defense on the defensive side of the ball.
I mean,
All right. Let me
I can answer that one.
yeah, I was going to say it.
Wait, hold on. I want to go to Bo. I know he has to get going in a moment. So say what you're going to say, but when you're done with that, let everybody know how they can get a hold of you. Go ahead, Bo.
Yeah. So, I mean, why it would make sense to hire an OC as your head coach is because then you never have to worry about that particular position getting poached, right?
I understand.
So, I mean, that's the only way it really makes a lot of sense is it's like, okay, you never have to worry about your quarterback having to learn a new system every couple years because another team is snagging that guy. But at the same time, you also need a good defense. So, I mean, that I feel like you can go either way. But yeah, that's why the pundits keep leaning into that. But I don't necessarily agree with it. Granted, I was a defensive guy, so I like a solid defense that's there and will grind out a game. So there's that. And then, of course, you can find me right here every Tuesday. And, of course, on my channel at Football Talk, on all the socials, Football Talk with Bo, and, of course, Roku TV 5 days a week. Thanks again for having me on, guys. I got to get to the next show. Take it easy.
Thanks, Bo. Thank you. All right. With that said, okay. The only thing I'll say about this whole topic here is this. Head coach is only as good as his assistant coaches. That's all there is to it. So, yeah, if you hire a good staff, then you have a puncher's chance that things should turn out pretty well. Great first act for Brad, by the way. I'm glad that you came on. Obviously, we feel like we found you a good spot here in the South Florida Tribune Broadcasting Network. So you're going to see Bradley Walker here on Inside the Pigskin a couple of times a month. We're really happy that I have my fellow bull coming on the show with another bull. So, Brad, great stuff. So with that said, why don't you let everybody know, Brad, how they can get a hold of you and how to watch your show?
Yeah, guys, I have a podcast called The Walker Report every Thursday. We have a YouTube channel of the same name. You can catch me on Bradley Lewis Walker on Facebook, at Brad Walker 3083 on X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it today. Reach me on there. I am also, I met Scott at the Boca Raton Bowl when we took Syracuse to the whooping shed. Am I allowed to say that without getting
they
trouble?
Took out, in the eyes of Stuart Scott, they took out the whooping stick. How's that sound?
Okay, there we go. Okay, I'll say that. I have been covering USF football for the last 6 years, and I just took on softball, baseball, and lacrosse. So I'm looking forward to that. My articles are on NGSC Sports. It's N as in Nancy, G as in George, S as in Sam, C as in Charlie, sports.com. All my articles are there. I've written about golf and soccer and all that stuff through the years. So if you guys want to go over there and read that, but I do have a show called The Walker Report. And any one of you guys, Mel, Travis, Bo, Scott as well, any of you guys are welcome to come on my show anytime. Let me know, and I'll get you guys on.
And by the way, I should mention one other thing before we turn it over to Travis, that Brad does a great job sharing our content from the South Florida Tribune on Twitter X. So thank you very much, Brad. You do an incredible job. And I'm glad I made the decision to flip you over to football. I know you were targeted baseball, but then when I met you at the game, thought this was a good spot. Now you made me look like a genius. So with that said, Travis Holmes, let everybody know how they can get a hold of you.
You can find me on all the socials, Travis D. Holmes. You can find my writings covering the Jacksonville Jaguars at bigcatcountry.com. You can find me here every week Inside the Pigskin at 8:30 or wherever you get your podcast. And you can find my podcast, the Duval Diaper Jaguars podcast, on Fridays at 11:30 a.m. Again, wherever you get your podcast. Also, Mel, the reason that there's less offensive hirings this cycle is simply because they've hired like every offensive coordinator under the sun since 2021. We talked about it a few months back, how every team has changed their offensive coordinator since the 2021 season. Eventually, you get to the point where there's these all the guys who are out there at OC only have 1 or 2 years of experience under their belt. And at this point, the defense, you're going to have to start leaning to the defensive guys who are available when you have an opening. That was my thought process on it anyways.
Yeah, that's a great point. It really is. So thanks for bringing that up while we had time. All right, Mel, let everybody know that how they get a hold of you as well.
All social media at Mel Farr Jr., whatever it is, Instagram, Twitter, X, LinkedIn, Facebook. at Mel Farr Jr. And you can follow what we have going on here in Georgia and also up in Michigan for the youth at melfarr.org.
Okay, well, one more time here. Just want to let everybody know that Inside the Pigskin being broadcast around the world. The audio version of Inside the Pigskin can be heard on iHeartRadio, Apple, Spotify, Google, wherever you get your podcasts. Please hit the red subscribe button on YouTube, South Florida Tribune. We're striving for more subscribers. Also, please comment, like, and share the broadcast. Want to be a guest? No problem. I had an active chat room. Of course, Jeremy Ballard comes on anyways, but he's an example of what we like to do is find some talent and new talent as well. So contribute to the chat room or send your topic ideas to southfloridatribune@gmail.com. If you want to advertise cost efficiently, give me a call at 954-304-4941. We broadcast live on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and YouTube. Our website is www.southfloridatribune.com, Twitter/X @Tribune South. Candy Ebling is behind the scenes producing the show. She's a jack of all trades. My book out there is called Lessons from the Microphone, Tuning into the Enduring Wisdom of Visionary Leaders. Available on Kindle and Amazon. It pretty much emphasizes, old school media versus new school media. If you're learning to find out, just learn about the media. That's great. Otherwise, if you're looking to get into business, well, this is another way to find out. So I don't leave out many things in there. It's a very inexpensive purchase on Amazon and Kindle. So great show tonight. Again, I'm always looking, and I should also point out that I rest in peace, Peterwein, but all the tributes are just beginning on my end. So on behalf of Bo, Travis, Mel, and Bradley, my name is Scott Morgan, Roth the Motor City Badmouth. Thank you for joining us on this edition of Inside the Pigskin. We will see you next Tuesday night. Good night, everybody, and have a great week.